Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video, a very special video. This here is the Darkhorse 2. This is a kukri design, just a phenomenal workhorse design from Shade of Indonesia. Now at the time of this video, this is the newest design in the Shade of Indonesia lineup. They are known for beautiful, hard use, fixed blade designs, handcrafted, hand forged, just phenomenal work. Really at the top of the list when it comes to knife design and manufacturing in Indonesia. They do a phenomenal job, just beautiful work, and that's absolutely the case here with the Darkhorse 2. So at this point, I've put this to good, hard field use. I have a number of thoughts and a number of impressions. So what we're going to do when we come back, I'm going to roll in all the field use footage, talk to you about my overall use experience. Then we're going to come back to the studio. I'll show you this in a little more detail so that you can see everything you need to know about this Darkhorse 2. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Shade of Indonesia who did provide this for review. And so now, as we get into the field use with the Shade Indonesia Darkhorse 2. The first thing I'm going to say, the overall craftsmanship on this Darkhorse 2 is phenomenal. Just so nicely done, made a 5160 and for the most part, handmade, hand forged, hand finished. Just spectacular. Now there are some machine finished parts to this, but for the most part, hand finished. And the very first thing you're going to see as I get into this work, just awesome chopping capability. This is a splitting beast. If you've been watching my channel, you realize I am definitely a hard use fixed blade type of guy. The thing for me is I generally, and for the most part, really do rely on my hard use fixed blades for fire prep, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. So all the splitting tasks are going to be critical. A knife really has to perform under really tough conditions, and the Darkhorse 2 having absolutely no problem at all. So you can see here time and time again slamming down on this blade. And the fact that it's more than a 1/4 inch thick, it is more than durable. It has a beautiful edge and just does a wonderful job with the splitting tasks. Now, even though this wood is a little bit stubborn, the Darkhorse 2 doing a wonderful job. You will see that I do have a couple of different types of wood. I have a pretty much straight grain oak, and then I have a real gnarly and twisted maple. This maple I have used to test a number of different knives, and it is extremely stubborn, very, very difficult. So the maple is really tough, but the Darkhorse 2 capable of doing the work. Now, granted, from time to time, this does get a little bit stuck, but overall, it does a nice job. And the fact of the matter is, this is not a saber ground knife, really more of a full flat grind, or maybe you'd call it a full convex, but it does a nice job with the splitting tasks, translating the crack from the top of the wood all the way down to the bottom. So the knife being a nice large size, but beefy, overbuilt, and in the 5160, really capable of taking a pounding. And as I mentioned, working very well to translate the crack from the top of the wood all the way to the bottom. Now you'll see a couple of different things. First and foremost, I am definitely using it kind of like you would an axe and just getting some good splitting action. At certain points in time, you'll notice it does the job to go all the way down and through the wood. But other times I do resort on the baton. Either way, doing a wonderful job. I have used this knife at length for a number of different splitting tasks. Here you can see getting a little bit more cross-grained. So at this particular time, you'll notice I did want to sort of buck these pieces of wood down just a little bit shorter. I do like to process my wood a few different ways for length, but also to get it to the point where I am really truly able to start my fire. And you can't always have super large pieces. So here you can see doing a nice job with the chopping all the way around. Absolutely awesome, and really getting my wood prepared for my fire. And that's my fuel. But what about the sort of kindling? Well, that's another thing with my survival knives. As I get into the fire prep, the knife absolutely has to be able to get an appropriate amount of kindling and an appropriate amount of tinder. Now, because this is a kukri design, there are a few aspects to consider. This does not have a full finger choil, but it has like a choil ricasso area that allows you to get forward on the blade and have a nice balance. I do find that this is generally very well balanced. And the only deficiency, and you'll see this a couple of times, I do struggle a little bit to work down onto the working surface because this has a very pronounced curve, and because it's forward canted and then it has a very large belly, it does mean that sometimes working down onto your working surface can be a little bit difficult, but you need to play with your technique. So you'll notice here in some of the cases, I am starting a little closer up towards the handle, towards that sort of ricasso and choil area. And then once I start working further down the piece of wood, I end up kind of working more towards the belly. Now, one thing worth noting, there are some hot spots in this design. Because you're really gripping further up into that ricasso area, it does require you to grip heavily onto the jimping. This is one of those hand finished touches here where the jimping is a little bit sharp. In my opinion, it's stylish. I love the way it looks. It is functional. It definitely aids in grip, but it can beat up on your hands. So that's just something worth noting. Now, you do also have the ability to put your thumb up over the top of the spine. This will give you a little bit more control. I didn't find I needed it. I was working pretty well with a full hammer grip, but here with my thumb over the top of the spine, again, you'll notice planing down the wood and then changing my actual position of the knife to get more on the belly so I can get that curl finished off all the way down at the bottom of the piece of wood. Nice and sharp. That convex edge really does strike the perfect balance. And when I say the perfect balance between that chopping capability, but then the slicing capability. And as long as you're able to kind of play with your technique a little bit, like I mentioned right here, you'll see planing down and then kind of pulling the wood, working it here and getting that curl pulled off, no problem. But as long as you understand the geometry of this knife, you can feel the edge, you really do get a wonderful balance between the splitting, the chopping, and the carving. That to me is what you really want out of a knife that you're going to consider for a wilderness survival blade, and especially for firecraft. But what about the finer curls? At this point, really trying to lighten up, get some fine, dainty curls. It's one thing to get my kindling. Well, now I'm going to need a little bit of tinder, and those super fine curls are what you need. So lightening up, seeing if I can find that edge. That's another thing about Shade Indonesia. They do a fantastic job with their edge. The edge geometry, just awesome. And I've used a number of their blades at this point. That has absolutely been the case with each and every model. So you can see here, taking my time, trying to get little fine, refined curls. It's not the easiest wood for this test, but at the same time, I have to rely on my resources. I have to rely on the wood that I have, and I need to be able to start a fire no matter what. So taking my time, you can see here the full hammer grip, choked up on the blade, and just trying to find those little curls. I can definitely do it. Now here, this curly piece of maple, definitely difficult and twisty grain. You can really see it is all twisted up. But again, taking my time, trying to find that edge, and just getting some little curls. Granted, they're not sticking to the piece of wood, but at the same time, definitely capable of doing the work. And if you need to bear down and really hog out the wood, you can do that too. So the Darkhorse 2, definitely a flexible knife with great overall features, nice heat treat, forward weight, forward heft, but when you need it, that carving capability. But here you can see, trying to turn the corner here and get some fine fuzz. That fuzz and the fluff coming off a piece of wood is really going to help you start your fire. Everything else is to really sustain it and fuel it, but this here is what you're going to use to start your fire. And so trying to use your survival knife to get some fuzz, get some fluff, and really get a tinder bundle, that's going to be key. And those scraping tasks really do weigh into your ability to do this. Now, a few different things you'll see. I'm finding different parts of the blade, really trying to take advantage of different aspects to see if it will do the scraping tasks. And unfortunately for me, there's not a lot on here as it was designed that can truly do those scraping tasks. I thought the main spine was going to be sharp enough, but it really kind of wasn't. And barring my ability to truly get some fuzz, you'll see changing up my technique real quick, using the blade, and just getting myself some real fine little curls. This, at minimum, will at least help me to the best of my ability to start my fire. So all in all, I'm very happy. The Darkhorse 2 from Shade Indonesia, fantastic. So all right, guys, there you have it, a look at the Darkhorse 2. A very capable knife, phenomenal craftsmanship, incredibly refined edge, generally great ergonomics. Now, you heard me say a few times, I think there are some things, in my opinion, that could use a little bit of work, but most of what I have to say is my personal opinion. It's my opinion, it's how I use my knives, what I choose to use my knives for, and as you saw there, pretty much fire prep. Everybody's use experience is going to be a little bit different. So for me, some of the things that I definitely, and again, I'm just nitpicking a little bit, comes to hot spots and my ability to use the knife at length without developing hot spots in my grip, and just generally being able to work on some of the harder tasks without beating up too much on my hands. Now, some of the just phenomenal and beautiful design elements are a combination of design element for aesthetic, but also design elements for function. And sometimes that's a hard balance to kind of strike. And when you go for aggressive jimping, it can be hot on your hands. It looks phenomenal, but it can be hot on your hands. And when you have some of the little angles and curves and the different elements in the handles, it looks phenomenal. It looks aggressive. It looks the part. But again, it can be aggressive on your hands. So for me, what I really would say is with gloves, no problem at all. And maybe someone who has, more durable hands than me, I get it. You can say what you want, but I do use my hands a lot and I use knives all the time. And so this is just coming from the typical use, the typical performance in the types of environment and tasks that I use my knives for. But other than that, just phenomenal, phenomenal work. Let's take a look at this Darkhorse 2 in a little more detail. And so again, as we take a look at the Darkhorse 2, going through it here, the overall length around 15 inches, the total blade length about 9 inches with an 8 5/8 inch cutting edge. The overall handle length through the grip area, which is where I tend to like to measure it, is roughly around 4 1/4 inches. This is thick, a 7mm thick, or in other words, like 0.275 inch thick blade stock. Nice and beefy and robust. This is made of 5160 spring steel. Again, hand forged, hand crafted the entire way. And you'll see here weighing in at 1 pound, 4.6 ounces. In other words, 20.6 ounces. So a good sized knife, of course, a ton of steel here. That's going to aid in your chopping capability and just that good stout performance. And so as we take a look at the Darkhorse 2 in close-up detail, again, I have used this at considerable length. It was literally pristine when I got it, brandy new. But at this point, you can see just that beautiful hard use patina, which I love. The finish on this was kind of a matte finish, which I really enjoy. It wasn't a full satin finish, which you do see on some of Shade's designs, but this particular grind, you can see a full flat grind all the way from the top, and it feels like it's a full convex. So not a completely flat grind, but it kind of convexes all the way down to the refined edge. These knives are super slicey, even for their given size, and I do like that. Now, it did a nice job wedging open the wood, pretty much because you can see it is so thick up at the top. If this had just a little bit more of a shoulder in that saber grind, I think it would have split just a touch better, but I really can't complain. This did a phenomenal job in chopping, a phenomenal job in the batoning and splitting tasks, just wonderfully done. And the other thing that I really enjoy is this heavy hamon line, just really cool. So not only does it just show you, sort of some of the details in the heat treat, but just spectacular the way it looks, aggressive, and I like that. Has a fuller on top, does a couple of things. First is it definitely gives you some style points, but it does lose a little bit of mass out of the blade. And the interesting thing, the design of this, again, you can see you lose a huge amount of mass right here, which helps to keep this generally light. I like that they do that. So there are a couple of things about this design that lends itself very well to your typical sort of tasks. For me and batoning, having this nice large shelf on top, tons of striking surface. It also keeps this forward weighted and gives you chopping power and mass forward towards the belly of the knife to really do a great job smashing down and splitting through the wood. Now, the overall handle, beautiful. You can see here it has that sort of traction finish. Just a great overall aesthetic, nice style. Now, again, it is going to be a little bit aggressive on your hands, but the handle itself doesn't bother me too much. Some of the area where I started to develop hot spots is really more up through the jimping. You can see fairly aggressive, large jimping, and it leaves some teeth. This is going to be a hard thing to show you with this lanyard on here, but as I slide the lanyard out of the way, you can see that the jimping is aggressive and it has some teeth, kind of. It's not chamfered over, so that is kind of sharp. And the fact that this very last one just drops off when you get forward on the blade and you're gripping through this area, that definitely leaves a sharp spot right in the meat of your thumb, where your thumb index is there. So after a while, that definitely does leave a bit of a hot spot. So in my opinion, this area right through here, if it was just softened out, would really aid in long-term use comfort. And the other thing, which is just partly on me and what I'm used to, you'll notice that this does not have a true finger choil, but it does have a choil area, which is nice. So it does give you multiple grips, and you can see you can get right up on that. And this, again, would work very well for forward control and balance with this larger blade. But again, this area right here just leaves a lot to be desired. And even just from kind of holding this here, you can see that that definitely leaves a mark. So imagine using this for 20 or 30 minutes, what that's going to do. So in my opinion, really one of the main design considerations, in my opinion, again, is just to soften out this area right through here. And I think that would make a world of difference. But overall, as you look at the construction, this beautiful micarta, sort of a green and tan or green and yellow, just really cool. You have these copper pins and then the maker's mark. And as we flip the knife over and look at the spine, a lot of detail. So sort of that napping look, which is really phenomenal. And it ties the spine of the knife into the side of the blade. So as you can see here, up through this area, a similar look, just real aggressive and a neat look. I like that quite a bit. You do end up with a pommel. So as you see here, an exposed pommel into a little bit of a point. That's going to give you an opportunity to do some sort of cracking or different sort of, bashing tasks if you need to. So very cool. And it's an integrated lanyard hole. The detail continues under the bottom of the spine. So the handle scales here, you can see, are flush to the tang, but at the same time, the tang of the knife just having a lot of texture, a lot of different work, and really cool. Now I can feel that a little bit in my hands, but it does not cause any problem at all. That's actually very comfortable, and this has all been softened out, which I very much like. I love how this was done, and I think taking that same sort of softened approach up through the jimping on top would go a long way. So generally speaking, the design elements are phenomenal, and this Darkhorse 2, just from a general function and capability, is through the roof. I do love it quite a bit. It's just my opinion with some of the subtleties to soften this out on top to aid in long-term comfort. Now, a couple last little details. This did come with the lanyard, so as you can see, tying it into the forward lanyard hole. So this provides a lot of function and the ability to adjust this. It's kind of nice how they did this. So it did come with an adjustable lanyard. So as you see here, you can fine tune this to the overall size of your hands, which is really cool. And it's a little slip knot. And this actually does a real good job at giving you additional purchase on the knife. At certain times, the length of this does flap around a little bit. You could probably adjust it pretty easily if you wanted to and get rid of some of the tag end once you figure out the, I would say, just optimum length for your own personal needs. A beautiful, just phenomenal job with their leather work. That's absolutely the case with the sheath for the Darkhorse 2. So you'll see it is actually sort of multi-purpose, multi-use. This has a belt loop, which rides nicely on your belt. Has a retention strap for security on top with a couple of brass snaps. And then you end up with these additional straps over the top of the sheath. Now you can actually leverage this to do sort of a piggyback ride. So if you look at this sheath here, well, because this has a belt loop too, these can be piggyback sort of one on top of the other and actually give you not only your larger knife, but a smaller belt knife at the same time. You could include pouches or different sort of things, or if you really wanted to, you could probably rock this Scout style. Now this knife's going to be a little bit big for me, but the ability to take these straps, lash some things to it, or even lash this to a pack, I think is greatly advantageous. The welting, beautifully done, nice little design elements, and I like how the actual lower level here of the leather is extended. It just gives it a little extra design element and actually a little bit of functionality where the sheath sits nice and flat against your leg while you carry it. And as we insert the knife, the nice thing about this is because the straps are on the spine side, you don't need to worry about accidentally cutting your strap. So this sheath has actually worked out extremely well. It looks great, fits perfectly. It's just a real nice design. I like it a lot and very functional. So not only does it look beautiful, but it just rounds out this package nicely. So the Darkhorse 2, nicely done. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A look at the Darkhorse 2. A fantastic design from Shade of Indonesia. Again, at the time of this video, the newest design to date. Shade of Indonesia, all kinds of different knife shapes. So from smaller EDC style through your survival knives and all the way up through these hard use kukri style blades, phenomenal. Now, again, you've heard me say at length some things about this that are stellar performing features. I love the grind. I love the steel. 5160, a great choice for this. It is going to patina. I also like that. Hard use patina, to me, you earn that. So anytime my knives look used and beat up, that's a good thing. So the 5160, phenomenal choice, beautifully crafted. The hand crafting of Shade of Indonesia is second to none. Really nicely done. The design elements and the overall aesthetic, phenomenal. So generally speaking, on a performance side, very, very good. I would just say to Shade, if you could just soften this ricasso area for that long-term use grip, to me, that would take this and just put it through the roof. And so again, I would like to say thank you very much to Shade of Indonesia for providing this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.